Good morning, everyone. Once again, thank you so much for joining eTRUC's pretty much last installment of this industry partner webinar series. Uh, if you've joined us in the past, we've done other webinars that were focused on ZEVs 101, Charging 101. Um, and so this again will be our fourth and final installment for this webinar series for the eTRUC project, which is ZEV Site Planning 101. And it'll be an in-depth look at ZEV site selection and planning. Next slide, please. So we'll do a quick intro of the team and for any folks joining us for the first time who have never joined or participated in an eTRUC meeting, whether it's on any of our advisory committee meetings or as part of this webinar series, we'll give a quick little preview of what the project is about and some of the advisory committees that we facilitate meetings for this project, just so that folks gain a little understanding about what eTRUC is all about. And then we'll move it along to our main presentation for today with Brianna from ZEV Solutions. And then we'll have an opportunity for some Q&A, some discussion with Brianna, and then we'll wrap it all up at the hour. So next slide, please. My name is Giovanni Hernandez, and I'm the Clean Mobility Program Manager for Grid Alternatives from the Greater Los Angeles office. And I've been with Grid almost about 3 years now, working on this project as well for almost 3 years. And two of my colleagues could not be here today, which you see on screen, Shamika Dixon, who is our Workforce Development Director, and Stella Ursua, who is our Director of Community Engagement and Partnerships, who are also involved with the project on behalf of Grid. I'll turn it over to Giovanna from the CalSTART team.
Thank you, Giovanna Escamilla. I'm an associate project manager at CalSTART in the Clean Fuels and Infrastructure department. Thank you everybody for joining us, and we're excited to have a great webinar.
All right, and then I believe the next slide is for you, Gia.
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to give a quick overview of the project. eTRUC's purpose is to create a California research hub to accelerate the electrification of the heavy-duty drayage vehicle market. There are three main goals and objectives of this project. eTRUC looks to advance the research and development activities that extend the delivery range of battery electric trucks, beginning with drayage operations. We also engage with stakeholders with a community-first approach to promote equity and workforce development opportunities in priority communities affected by the goods movement. Lastly, eTRUC is planning and deploying innovative, scalable public corridor charging strategies for heavy-duty electric trucks, and this again begins with drayage.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gia. And as part of this project, CalSTART and Grid co-facilitate two advisory committees for the project, which is one that's focused on community engagement, which is the CTAC that you see on screen, which is called the Community First Technology Advisory Committee. And so the purpose is for throughout the project to have a community first engagement framework so that we're ensuring that pollution impacted and underserved and tribal communities are involved in creating and guiding this initiative. And so some of those examples or objectives in that purpose is helping inform various plans we put in place regarding community engagement, needs and impact, dissemination and solicitation of input on the project at various stages of this planning process, given that this project is still in just phase one. Um, and also just promotion of equity in priority communities uh, and from the inception, right, to foster community-driven partnerships for technology and zero emission freight corridor development planning, right, and site prioritization. And the other committee that we have formed together and have facilitated meetings for almost 3 years now is the one focused on workforce development, the WEDAC. And so that is ensuring that many of these pollution impacted communities we've alluded to get to benefit from the larger clean energy transition, heavy duty, medium duty electrification, right? That jobs are created in these communities, but also uh, identifying needs, gaps in workforce development, training, curriculum, et cetera, for this sector. And so we do have various different stakeholders that provide us with necessary input and feedback as it relates to this. And the project is currently working on a final report that will cover a lot of our assessment on gaps, needs in the in the in the uh, in the curriculum realm, right, if you will, training realm, and what other opportunities exist that we can connect, right, that we're seeing. And so, similar to the CTAC, a lot of those members help provide input, feedback throughout that process as well. And so, just wanted to share a little bit about both of those advisory committees. And then as a project, also EPRI and CalSTART also facilitate two other advisory committees that are more technical and more related to industry partners. And then you can find all the recordings to all of the advisory committees that have been held. They've been held at a quarterly basis since the fall of 2022. And you can find all of the recordings of these advisory committees on the project website, which is etruc.org. So I also wanted to just share that with you all. And with that, I think we are ready to turn it over to our guest presenter for today, which I have the honor of introducing, um, Brianna Martin, who is a community engagement and communications analyst at ZEV Solutions. And Brianna leads community engagement, workforce development, and communications functions at ZEV Solutions. Since joining the ZEV team in 2022, she has held several positions supporting ZEV's sales and policy teams. ZEV is working towards providing next generation infrastructure powering America's transportation fleets by offering charging, parking, and fleet management services that enable commercial fleets to transition to zero emission easily and affordably. Brianna's work focuses on leveraging community and stakeholder relationships and knowledge to create and manage external engagement that communicates and amplifies ZEV's missions. Prior to coming to ZEV, Brianna consulted on infrastructure and city projects, focusing on community engagement, research, and strategic planning in urban markets across the U.S. She graduated from Boston University with a degree in public relations. Um, Folks, feel free as you are listening in to Brianna's presentation to, put your questions in the chat. Raise your hand if you have a question. I know Brianna will reiterate this to you all as well, but she welcomes questions as she moves along. And then we'll also have the opportunity to ask questions as well, field for questions from our audience after her presentation as well. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Brianna. Thank you so much.
Wow, thanks, Gio. I didn't know that you were gonna give me my full bio. That made me seem very is a stroll down memory lane. That was great. Um, so I'm well, first, I want to start off by thanking Grid and the rest of the partners that came together to put all of this together. These sorts of partnerships for ZEM, an infrastructure provider, which is essentially what we are, help us to take on what are really ambitious goals of speeding up electrification in this market. And so, we're the expert in charging installation and operations, and we're experts in the needs of our customers and electric fleets, and being able to interact with partners like CEC, EPRI, CalStart, and Grid help create like the ecosystem that we're really trying to form. So I want to say thank you for that. Can we go to the next slide? So I'm Brianna Martin. I've worked at ZEM for 3 years and I'm based in Brooklyn. Yeah, like Gio said, my background is in sort of community engagement and research. I've worked on several infrastructure projects that were rolled out mostly on the West Coast in the last 4 years. And at ZEM, I lead community engagement, communications, and workforce development. Closely with Grid, actually. We do a lot of exciting stuff together. So we'll talk about that more in upcoming slides. So some background on ZEM. ZEM was founded in 2017 to offer turnkey EV solutions to commercial fleets transitioning to meet the standards of the new green economy. And I'm sure as a lot of us are experiencing, the standards of the new green economy are changing and developing, but in a way that has still allowed our mission to sort of move forward and remain the same. And we'll explain that in the upcoming slides. We help companies meet electric vehicle goals and mandates without the high costs and complexities of owning their own charging infrastructure. And we can go to the next slide. And essentially, we do that by offering our customers charging, parking, and other fleet management solutions in a sort of package deal using infrastructure that we design, develop, and operate ourselves. So our role in the industry is a bit as a leader and a first mover. We've been operating a site since 2021. So we do a lot of sort of thought leadership about best practices, things that we've learned in our years of operations. And we also work hard to hopefully be policy influencers to help move this transition in the fastest way that we can get there, and remain globally competitive when it comes to reaching zero emissions. Our mission focuses on accelerating sustainable transportation for all fleets, focusing on affordability, scalability, and environmental impacts. I would say the most important aspects of that is being able to work with all fleet sizes, individual owner operators, and the largest fleets in the country to be able to offer them that same amount of affordability, scalability, and environmental benefits. And the impact that we can see in the industry thus far, as a first mover and a leader, we can see the impact that we've had in Southern California with our LAX location, which we'll talk about more in a second. But it really focuses on sustainability and effectiveness for all fleet sizes, and we work with all class vehicles. In terms of community engagement and how my work plays into sort of the core practice of ZEM, community engagement and workforce development partnerships are necessary in our planning, development, and hiring process. So because we're sort of, all of us on this call really are pioneering a new industry, we play a really important role in creating the industry that we want to work in the future. And that is an opportunity at ZEM that we take really seriously in terms of working with our workforce and working with the community around our LAX depot to understand their needs, to not be prescriptive, and to be a community partner for Los Angeles and Inglewood as well, and for the airport. So if you go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about LAX specifically. So as I said, our LAX depot has been operational for 3 years. It's a 3.1 acre site, and it's one of the largest in the country. We operate 78 DC fast chargers with a 7.5 megawatt interconnect, which is really impressive. And, we have some other sites to go over, and you'll see how, in terms of size and scale, we continue to grow as we expand outside of even Southern California too. We first began operations in December of 2021 and were fully commissioned in January of 2024. And if you look at this sort of chart, this graphic on the bottom left, you can see sort of what that first year of full operations looked like for us. The last 6 months of 2024, we were charging around 700 vehicles a day, which, is astronomical and was, right at the offset of us being fully energized. So things like having a high throughput and low lead time and really impressive utilization are really vital factors in explaining why ZEV is such a powerful use case for fleets looking to transition. And I would say that our LAX depot is designed to service rental car, rideshare, passenger shuttle, all last mile air cargo and drayage customers. But I do think that one of the things that you get from being a first mover in the industry and having, operational experience is that what we've learned about the market from operating around LAX is something that we could not have experienced from even the thousands of calls that we made to Southern California fleets before building in LAX, to the point where now our LAX site is majority focused on supporting rideshare vehicles because that's where we see the most need, but still designed so that we're able to support all of these different sorts of fleets at the same time. And our impact in 2024, we rounded out the year dispensing 5.5 million kilowatt hours of electricity, doing over 154,000 charge sessions, and saving over 2 million kilograms of CO2 from being emitted. Can we go to the next slide? So in terms of thinking about market and site selection, this slide will give you just a little bit of input into what ZEV's future looks like. So you'll see our operational site, LAX, in yellow as sort of an open and functioning site, and then sites that are in their planning or construction process in green, that is CTAC in Washington, at the Port of Long Beach, the Port of Newark, and the Port of Savannah. What I would say that we can see from this site, from this sort of site plan, is essentially a mix of the things that we've already talked about, right? The places where we see customer need and sort of advantageous market, I guess, attributes, which we'll define in a later slide, mixed with opportunity. So we build all of our depots near airports, seaports, and major transportation assets. So if you were to compare this map, you would see a lot of overlap with those sort of pinpoints, but then you'll also see overlap in markets that have, the most aggressive funding opportunities, in markets that have high concentrations of fleets, where there is the most interest, things like that. Let me go to the next slide. Also, Gio already mentioned this, but you can feel free to jump in anytime with questions. I don't need to be talking for the full time straight through. I'm happy to answer any questions as we go. So in terms of upcoming selected sites, We have our Long Beach depot that'll be coming online this year. And in terms of, sorry, I lost track of where I am. So centrally located at the Port of Long Beach, this site will mostly serve drayage vehicles because that is the market that is there. But sorry, I keep like losing my space. But essentially, it's a 2.7 acre facility, and it will be one of the largest in the country in terms of the amount of connected chargers and the capacity. It's a 15, you can't see the slides? Did someone say, can you guys see the slides?
Yes, we can see them.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, just finding my place. Yes, so 15 megawatt interconnect, which is a really big deal and will help to support the high volume of drayage vehicles that will go through this site. That's like twice as much as we have at LAX. We expect to service 500 vehicles a day from the Long Beach site, which is less than what we did at LAX. But if you compare the fact that we're mostly charging light duty, rideshare vehicles to the drayage vehicles, like that's a really impressive amount of capacity, and it will still be more than what we're doing at LAX. Yeah, and so essentially the Long Beach site, a lot of the factors that go into making this an advantageous second site in Southern California go into like the funding opportunities that are there, the interest that we have from fleets that are already servicing the port, and the participation that we have from partners like Grid, like the port itself, and yeah. So can we go to the next slide? Okay, similarly, but in a completely different market, our site that is currently under construction in Newark will be serving the port of Newark, but from 3 miles from the port, which will make it advantageous for both serving vehicles that service the port and that work for the sort of surrounding intermodal facilities. We're looking at a 30 megawatt interconnect in this market, which is huge. And I would say that there's a lot of interesting indicators in New Jersey that this is a good market for ZEV and a good market for projects like this. We've seen a lot of interest and support, confident support from New Jersey since there's been more uncertainty coming from the federal level, from the Port of New Jersey and from municipal leadership. We've received a public sort of expressed interest in continuing to support programs that support our sites and projects like this, and an interest in electrification and in being pioneers in the transition to electric. And I didn't mention this in the last slide, but you can sort of see just the amount of volume that we're expecting from this market. So between the Port of New York and New Jersey, we have almost 30,000 drayage trucks that have like amenable duty cycles for electric. So, okay, going to the next slide. Okay, so in terms of, to sort of narrow the conversation down to site selection, a lot of the things that we've talked about thus far go into geographic market identification. That is the part of the process where we are identifying, which funding schemes are going to work for us the best, where there's real estate, where there's interest. All of those things sort of go into the geographic market identification, where we would decide that we'd want to be, in a specific city or market rather than another. which sort of brings us to the point of identifying the utility, iterations of locations based on available properties and electric utility infrastructure capacity, engaging with property agents and utility on specific locations with the end goal of site control for the property in an attractive market and ample electric utility infrastructure to make a financially attractive business case. So I would say that that is, a part of the process straight way through, but coming together to have an attractive business case, all of these factors sort of have to line up in the correct way. You have to have the customer interest. You have to have the support, especially because a lot of the funding support that works best for ZEEM is funding that goes direct to our customers to support their vehicle needs. Vehicle pricing is a huge barrier for customers that are already interested in electric, and markets that work best for us are the ones that are proactively addressing what their fleets need to participate in this transition. Give me the next slide. Okay, so once you have site control over your site, oh, sorry, did we skip a slide? No. My fault. So anyway, that's when we go in and begin to do sort of like aggressive sales to get kind of letters of interest for people who will be looking to electrify. So before we do any of the site selection, ZEEM spent some of our first few years as a company functioning pretty much as a call center, reaching out to fleets to see who was interested in electrifying and what were the factors that were affecting them. So then when it comes time to select a site, we then go back to those same customers to assess what changes they've experienced since we first reached out to them, and to analyze the market for customers that are both interested and customers that have amenable duty cycles that may not be interested, to understand why. After that, the development team draws up conceptual layouts based on available utility capacity and the property size and shape. That's another big factor, is the shape and size of a property can sometimes be a big go, no go when it comes to designing a site that is supposed to be amenable to drayage trucks and Class 8 trucks. That is sort of an ongoing conversation about the best way to do that. And once you get formal engineering to 30%, then you move on to the process of site plan, your one line, and your utility load letter. Those are sort of identified as, like, the utility load letter is one of the kind of most elongated processes. And so getting that started early as one of your first steps in working with the utility can be really helpful in making sure that you don't have any sort of start stops in the process. I would say that one thing that I've learned about site selection is that order is one of the most important things in making sure that you're able to stay on a timeline once you've established one. So a lot of the things that we do at ZEEM before we begin construction is just to make sure that we won't have to go back on the timeline that we've already put out. So the rough order of magnitude: construction costs, engagement with the utility for electric tariff information, assembling a business case and iterations of input, and financial decision to pivot, proceed, or abandon. Now, if the choice is to proceed, and we can go to the next slide. So once you essentially have site control and the approval to move into the permitting and construction process, so you would then move on to the permit and bid, set of drawings, decision on the project delivery method, and the design, bid, build, or design build. You have to submit new service requests to utilities, select procurement of long lead time equipment, which includes things like chargers, transformers, electrical service and distribution equipment. That could also be things like switch gear, anything that, and that list will seems to sort of be growing as there's ongoing conversations about tariffs and things. Engaging in the construction bid process, selecting a construction contractor to offset the beginning of your formal permitting process, and securing your engineering support for things like submittals, permitting, and RFIs. Can you go to that slide? And utility collaboration. So this is one of the most, I'll go back to that question once I'm through with the slide. So collaborating with the utility is the one thing that I would say that is sort of a case-by-case basis on when you get all these steps done, but you want them to be getting done as soon as possible. Being a ally to your utility company and having a relationship with them that isn't so rushed all the time, which for a provider like us, we want as much power as we can get, as fast as we can get it, because we know that we have the customer need for these sites, and beginning your engagement with the utility as early as possible can make it so that it feels like a symbiotic relationship instead of one filled with demands. And you also want to reduce feelings of risk that they may be experiencing. So in terms of kind of outlining utility collaborations, some things to think about include leveraging EV teams within the utility structure. They usually have their own EV team, who can be, an ally in getting the things that you need. Upon site selection, EV depot developers should know who the utility is, the point of contact, and the incentives and tariffs that will be affecting their project, as well as local distribution of circuit voltage and estimated capacity, which can be difficult because sometimes, especially in some of the smaller markets that we're looking in, you may have to ask the utility to, if the utility has to increase their capacity, that is sort of a drawn out and kind of onerous process. Upon finalized 30% of construction drawings, that offsets your time to get your new service request with a site plan, electrical online, and your load letter. Engaging the electrical service requirements and specific tariff options, getting into your primary and secondary service, and doing a utility side construction allowance approach. And dealing with the process that the utility has will be on a case-by-case basis. So that is just another argument for engaging them early, and not just when you have something to ask for, but actually having a conversation about, and a lot of the things that we reference is actually about how sites like ours help support the utility, help support the grid resilience, and can be, our collaboration can extend past getting the interconnect that we need to being more about supporting the utility to supporting a more resilient and smart city. Okay, I'm gonna read this question. Brianna, as for the project timeline, approximately how much time do you think org should plan for in regards to establishing a charging hub? So in terms of from the beginning of what we're talking about, like the market identification process, having 2 years to establish, the market that you want to be in, work to build the external relationships that you want before you start the site process that we've been going over in the last 3 slides. That is what's going to be, more than enough time to really meet your goal for when you want your build out to be. These projects can take anywhere from 12 to 18 months, and that is, a good project timeline. That's still kind of on time. And so yeah, the site selection process up through construction and all of that, I would say giving yourself sort of, and so when we're working with customers, we're saying, if you're going to build your own site, you're going to need really like 2 to 3 years to build something that is going to be able to sustain, say, even a medium-sized fleet. Versus when ZEM enters a new market, we can promise a faster, like an accelerated installation and operation timeline. And we can also promise consistent and best-in-class operations of the charging infrastructure, knowledge of the infrastructure and of how operating EVs works. In terms of difficulties encountered when working with utilities, I would say that working with utilities can be contentious, I think, because of the way that, because of the nature of the relationship, which is why I advocated for going to your utility early and talking about the benefits of electrification. It's a big ask to ask for, what we have at Newark, a 30 megawatt interconnect. And we got that by working with the utility and working with entities that already had the power. So being an asset to your utility company and having that relationship, establishing it, and also I don't necessarily think that this is what anyone wants to hear, but a lot of the things that the utilities are up against are things that we would like to change, but we really can't. So I think that having realistic asks and being willing to be collaborative are things that go a long way in getting the interconnect that you want. But I would say in terms of speeding up timelines with working with utilities, that is really a case by case basis. And if I didn't adequately answer that question, let me know, but we can go to the next slide. So in terms of things that enable a market, things that make a market more attractive than others, that EV charging rate is really important, accelerated permitting, optimal properties next to those transportation assets that we were talking about. Real estate becomes a bigger and bigger concern. I mean, I think most of you work in Southern California, and that the real estate cost there is really high. But in a lot of the markets that we're working in, being able to find the right site is important, and something that if a market or a customer were to come to us with, that would be a hugely beneficial leg up in getting something accelerated. Accelerating utility interconnects and incentives for trucks and infrastructure are things that we look for that will enable a market in the process of working on getting all of this site selection stuff. I think that's is there one more slide? No, okay, that is my last slide. I would say overall that the site selection process is one that is ongoing, and I think what has benefited ZEM the most in being able to identify sites where we actually do have high volume of customers is in reaching out to fleets. The work that we did in the beginning of our business, sort of functioning as a call center and calling fleets and asking them about what their needs were, inform everything that we do, inform how we built LAX, sort of foreshadowed some of the learnings that we're coming to realize now, and were important in establishing the sorts of relationships that we needed, not just with fleets, but also with utilities and stakeholders. to make this an accelerated transition. If anybody on this call wants to know how to get, a depot going in the next 5 years, then I think there's a lot of different routes that you could go. But in terms of what we experience as best practices, how we have been able to get, these very large interconnects and these what we think are some of the most desirable sites in the country and some of the best markets in the country, has come down to the intersection of relationships and preparedness. Stella, do you have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Brianna and Giovanni, did you want me to wait a little bit? I just raised my hand just to so I can get this question in, but I can wait if we're going to have questions later on.
No, go
Is that
ahead.
okay right now?
Yeah,
Okay.
questions.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. Let me fix my screen. So thank you so much, Brianna, for the presentation. We really appreciate your participating in this particular meeting. And so I was just thinking, and I might know the answer, but how do you all determine how close the charging stations should be, right? So you have one over by LAX, you have one over here at the Port of Long Beach. I mean, like, is it based on the number of miles? I would think that, a truck could travel, with a charge, or are there other considerations there?
Yeah, so the sites that I presented to you that were highlighted in yellow and green, they're all going to be under 10 miles from a major transportation asset where we've identified that there are sort of amenable use cases for electric, and we've identified that there's interest. I would say that in terms of what works, so in terms of if we were to think about LAX and Long Beach, right, those two depots will serve two different markets essentially. But and I didn't bring this up in the presentation because it's sort of farther down the line, but sorry, I got distracted by that question. But ZEM operates on sort of a hub and spoke model, right? So these hubs are right next to the biggest transportation assets in the country, and then the spokes, which will come, down the line, will help connect those transportation assets. So Long Beach and LAX, by the time Long Beach reaches full energization, those sites will be able to work together because of where we expect charging availability to go and where we expect to continue to build. And we do know that we have, competitors building long corridors, which is not what we do. We don't do any public charging. We do shared charging, which involves bringing multiple fleets on a single site to, up utilization of infrastructure, reduce costs. Yeah, so that is what I would say, that the map really identifies what we see as those kind of linchpin markets, and then there will be spokes that will surround those markets, and then that will connect what we can already see.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. That makes sense. Thanks, Brianna.
Thank you. So Juan asked, what would you say is the main driver for fleet electrification within fleet operators your company has reached out to? So, I mean, transparently, we're reaching out to fleets again, right? Because we all know that there's been not just a big change in our market, but also lots of sort of shifting sentiments and a lot of uncertainty. I would say the main drivers for wanting to electrify in California used to be opportunity. We've been operating for 3 years, and our customers saw opportunity in their ability to transition, and our ability to offer them that electric transition at some amount of cost parity for what they were paying for diesel. For many of the first movers in EV is all it takes, especially in Southern California. I would say now we're, as an industry, not in a position to make any assumptions. I think I would recommend that we all be looking again to see who our allies are, who are allies that we're maybe not reaching out to. I think something that was exposed to me as the communications lead in this sort of federal transition was that we as an industry were relying really heavy on the environmental talking points of electrification. And there were a lot of other reasons that were coming up that people were really interested in, whether that be global competitiveness or energy resilience. There's lots of other things that we can see that people are interested in. And I personally am looking for empirical evidence, research, anything like that, that is asking the public, not just fleet operators, right? Because we feel like we have a good understanding of fleet operators, though we're working to keep that understanding going and keep it fresh. But we want to know across the country who is a proponent of EV, and we don't want to make any assumptions about why they are a proponent of EV or what their other beliefs are. So I hope that answers that question.
That's great. Great questions, everyone. Keep them coming. If you have more, feel free to put them in the chat, raise your hand, come off mute. Now is the time to pretty much, ask any questions here related to Brianna's presentation. I do want to just take the moment, Brianna, to thank you for your time in putting together the presentation, being here with us, and providing this sort of real life examples, right, from a company that's been doing it in different markets across the country. And I think it's really, really informative for folks here, primarily based in Los Angeles, but, folks can tune in from anywhere to, check out these webinars, this recordings that are posted on our website online. And so really, really, really informative stuff here. In the meantime, if you don't mind, while we wait for some other questions to come in, we do have some prepared questions for you. So happy to toss out that first one while we see if any other questions come in from our attendees. But you mentioned community engagement and workforce development partnerships are necessary in your planning, development, and hiring pipelines. Can you share some examples of how ZEEM has engaged the community and developed workforce development partnerships for the sites that are currently operational?
Yeah, so our only operational site right now is LAX. And I would say that Grid is a really vital workforce development partner that we have. We've done a lot of work together on curriculum preparation, on training programs, and on things like, this here, eTRUC and thought leadership and things like that. I would say that when it comes to expanding to, so that is also twofold, because I would say that we also, in addition to working with Southern California workforce development partners, we also partner with the community in Inglewood to see what the specific needs, interests are there, not just in a workforce development capacity, but also in a community needs capacity. Like, we believe that what ZEEM provides is good for the community. We're cleaning up airways, we're reducing noise pollution, all sorts of things. And so, in the interest of, again, not being prescriptive, and it is worth mentioning that our charging infrastructure that we have on site, most do not have access to being hands-on with that sort of charging infrastructure. So we've also had several events at our depot that allow people to, our partners or others, we'd love to have events open to the public in the future that allow people to get a closer look at our chargers, at how they function. We've also participated in sort of internship programs before, and we're interested in being able to, one, use our depots as sort of, we call them clean energy classrooms, in that we have a lot of the infrastructure to introduce the workforce to what we think will be, the tools of the future. Yeah.
Yeah, no, great. And I think that's a great segue for the next question we have, as you ended on that workforce note. Once a site has opened, right, like the LAX site that you have operational, how do you go about recruiting local residents to staff up a site? Like I know there's examples you could give for the LAX site, but with these newer sites that are planned, are there lessons learned from there that you would do differently for the other sites, right, that you will open up in terms of recruiting local residents, right, for those specific sites?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think in not in terms of what we would do differently, but I do think that the Long Beach site and the Newark site are, because they are port sites, will do a sort of different kind of community engagement. So right now I'm working with the Port of Long Beach and the Port of Newark are both landlord ports. So I'm working with their sort of staff to come up with a program for training up diesel mechanics, which I see as sort of a, at LAX, we want to service and engage the Inglewood community, but in a port capacity, we want to train up and create like job resilience for the people that already work there, right? We don't want to enter the space and change anything. And while this was another question that you sent over, while our depots can employ anywhere from like a 10 to 25, 30 people, we don't always have, there's not like an endless amount of hiring that we're doing for these sites, but there can be a consistent educational output in terms of working with the technologies. And so the opportunity to train up diesel mechanics is a really exciting one, and one that I think I'll keep everyone on this call updated about what sort of programmatic output we have for that. Yeah, I would also say that in terms of workforce development for these sorts of sites and builds like this, there isn't such thing as engaging too early. I think with long lead time for construction and things like that, I always want to engage when I have an offer. Obviously we're entering markets and we're taking up a lot of grid capacity and all of that. And so when it gets around time to that conversation, I want to say that we've already been engaging, all communities that will be affected by our footprint, to bring them into, the great work that we're doing, and to also ask about what they're experiencing, their pain points, so that we can, work together, support each other.
Absolutely, absolutely. Upskilling is a very key focus, right, that a lot of folks have been talking about in this space, to be cognizant of not displacing workers, right, and instead offering new training and upskilling so that they can continue in a ever evolving sector with new technologies, right? And so happy to hear that that's at the forefront of what you all are doing as well. Given that we are coming up on time here, Brianna, and I don't see any other questions in the chat or any hands raised, I wanted to see if there's anything else that maybe you wanted to share in this last minute or two that has not yet been covered in the discussion.
I would first of all say thank you to everyone for listening in, and I want to continue the conversation. This is my first time presenting on site selection, and I want to be a resource to anyone who has any additional questions. And we have a lot of subject matter experts at ZEM, and a lot of just like what I feel like is industry leading knowledge that we would love to share and disseminate and collaborate with other people with analogous goals. So I thank you for this time, and want to extend myself to anyone who wants to reach out for further conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great. Well, once again, folks, just want to thank Brianna and everyone over at Zeem Solutions just for your partnership. Again, I know that we get to partner with Zeem on other projects and initiatives, and we've been really lucky to have you as a partner as well. For eTRUC on the workforce development side of things for the WEDAC committee. And so thank you so much for giving us your time to prepare leading up for this and being here to impart some of these experiences and expertise with our members, our audience. We cannot thank you enough for that, Brianna, and we look forward to a continued partnership. And folks, please do reach out to Brianna with any questions you do have on the topic. With that, want to provide the GRIDS team's email addresses that you see on screen for any questions you may have for us. If you are interested in being a part of the CTAC or WEDAC committees that we've alluded to, feel free to email me. And let me know. Would love to, I can definitely add you to our listservs and those calendar invites. And this is the contact information here for our colleagues over at CalSTART, for Aaron and Giovanna, who are key partners of ours in this work. And with that, just want to thank all of you for your time and in joining us today. Hope you all enjoyed today's presentation, and I want to wish you all a great rest of your week. So with that, we are right on the hour, right on time. Thank you all so much.
Great job, everybody. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.